found this to be very, very interesting, pertaining to a conversation talking about energy and the sources of energy. There's some things that I'd like to talk about pertaining to energy before they get involved. Just like the problems that has recently been looked at pertaining to the water levels being lowered in the Colorado River, Lake Mead. I think the rains that they have recently gotten has raised it something like a foot, which is a good thing, but they're about 200 foot from where they ought to be, to give you some sort of an idea towards how much rain that it takes in and how much that it is lack of. A great deal of the problems that has brought that water table down, and it's not just that particular lake, but it's a great deal of the lakes all out west, is not so much the heat, in which that's been part of it, but the other part is the overconsumption of people drinking from the same well. You know, it's one thing if you got a, let's say, in the early 1980s, whenever Ronald Reagan was the president of the United States, right before he became president, I'm pretty sure that the population out in California probably wasn't but about half of what it is now. Where has all the people come from out in California? A great deal of them has come from Mexico, Spanish descent, or they've come from even further on down towards South America, the Latino community. Whenever you have, instead of 20 million, let's say double that, 40 million, instead of the water level dropping, let's say on average 3 foot a year out of the same lake, now it's dropping 6 feet a year, because you got so many immigrants that has come into California that the system cannot withstand all the people. It's the same way with the highway systems. It's the same way with the electric grids. And that's what we're fixing to get involved in here pertaining to power stations. That's being discussed towards various projects that's going on here in America. But I would just like to clarify, here it is August, what is today? I don't know, right at the 18th, or I guess right at the 20th of 2022, that it has still not been properly addressed. Yes, the carbon dioxides that we're getting up into the air is part of it. Yes, the extreme heat is part of it. Yes, with the illegal immigrants coming over here and putting so many people out west is another big part of it. But also another big part of it is draining the resources out of the ground, and now the heat is escaping from the mantle that's making things even evaporate even quicker. That's one of the reasons why the upper atmosphere is as hot as it is. That's the reason why the upper atmosphere is collecting all the moisture that it's collecting. The moisture is going up higher because it's hotter. Because it's going up higher, it can hold more moisture. And because it can hold more moisture, whenever it does release the moisture, it releases it all at once instead of like it ought to. In other words, it has brought instability to our global society. And these things should have been addressed 30 plus years ago, but are only now starting to catch up with us towards what the experts and the professional people has lacked in doing towards taking care of our safety and our well-being. Please listen.
Joke that for him and for other boosters of nuclear power who hope to see it blossom again as an industry, it's somewhat like being a character in Samuel Beckett's play Waiting for Godot. Because as you know, there has not been a nuclear plant, a new nuclear build that's come online in many years in this country. So I think, Doug, you mentioned there are 30 units of different sizes under at least some kind of review, if not actual construction. And I guess my question would be, and I think my other colleagues here in the media would like to know, when is the next nuclear plant, SMR in particular, going to be operational, and where is it going to be, and what company is going to be the beneficiary of its build? Do we know that?
But then, as they're talking about nuclear plants, we got one over in Ukraine that is almost at the verge of another meltdown. So whenever you're talking about these nuclear plants, they're extremely critical. It's dangerous to the environment, and the consequences, if there is a nuclear meltdown, is just absolutely astounding. Of course, whenever we're dealing with what we're dealing with out west, with the water table getting so low that they're no longer going to be able to afford to lose the power from the Hoover Dam, because if the water gets so low, then the Hoover Dam will not be able to function the way that it was the way that it had been designed to function, if there is no water to move the turbines. So all these are issues that need to all be put into the same equation whenever we're talking about overloading the grid, the old grid system. Just like what happened down in Texas a couple years ago, whenever it got super cold down that way, the grid system could not bear it. It couldn't take it, and because of it, it shorted out. And whenever it did, because Texas is not hooked up to the international grid system, they suffered tremendously. Over 800 people died during that event. A lot of people died of carbon dioxide towards generators running, and they had them too close to the house. Some people died because they just froze to death. I mean, these electrical disturbances that even I was trying to help people with in 2017 is now showing up everywhere in regards towards supply and demand. And of course, what we're dealing with here is the depths of Satan. And a lot of people will say, oh no, that's not what it was talking about, whenever it says that in the first 3 or 4 chapters of Revelations, for he who have not known the depths of Satan, hold fast till I come, pertaining to running water and electricity and telephones. But I got news for you. Yes, it is all part of the depths. And I was like you, whenever I first read that, I'm thinking to myself, the depths of Satan. Well, that's pertaining to people out here that's just wicked. That's pertaining to people out here that don't care about moral, immoral sex. That's about people out here that's cussing and swearing and cheating and conniving and just some of the most low-life people in the world, of the depths of Satan. And God showed me, no, Dennis, there's more involved to the depths of Satan. These inventions that man has made for himself, in the glory of himself, are in fact the depths of Satan, because it was not designed for us originally to have running water, electricity, automobiles running up and down the road, heating the atmosphere up, pertaining to all the friction against the tires, against the asphalt. It was not meant for us to drain all the precious oil resources out of the ground and try to replace it with something else that it is not adequately working. It was not meant for us to put all the carbon dioxides up into the atmosphere while we're cutting down all the trees. I mean, these are all big no-nos that are all part of the depths of Satan. And the reason why I say that is because the main controversy that we're having right now, from the old world to the new world, is that now so many people of the old world has been introduced to the New World pertaining to the modernizations that the Western world has. Some of them has come over here and just visited, but a lot of them has gotten online and they've seen how that we're driving cars versus herding on camels. They've seen how that we've got this and we've got that, and our comfort is this way versus their comfort over there that's that way. And they want the same things that the Western world has been adapted to now for the past 100 years. You got some of these countries that have never, ever been adapted to the things that we're adapted to, and some of those places that I'm talking about is as close to America as just as far as South America, to the point of some of the Mayans and some of the other tribal groups down there don't want our conveniences because they rather adapt in a natural way, in a natural form, to the environment that they're living in down in South America. Now, as far as I'm concerned, there's some pretty tough hombres, right? I mean, because it gets pretty hot down there in South America, you know, close to the equator and everything. And, you know, they got to go get the water, and they got to go do this and go do that, and they got to till for this and till for that. But there's actually benefits in all them things that I'm talking about versus being so reliant upon modern Western civilization pertaining to all the conveniences that we have here. So what we're looking at here is a calamity between the old world and the new world, and we're seeing this every day in the structure of our ecosystem, and we're taking things out of context pertaining to the natural form of Mother Nature. And whenever you take things out of the natural form of Mother Nature, then you are asking for trouble. And these are troubles that we cannot control. We can't control hurricanes and tornadoes. We can't control mass amounts of water being dropped and causing a flood. We can't control heat domes that gets unrelenting hot in areas that has never seen this type of heat before. We are doing this to ourselves, and the reason why that we're doing it to ourselves is because Satan had blinded us, hoping that we would be blaming God instead of blaming Lucifer. It's Lucifer's fault, the one that has blinded us pertaining to all these inventions. That's the whole primary purpose of what it says in the Bible. Those who have not known the depths of Satan, hold fast till I come. We should not be in the era that we're in right now. We should have already seen peace and utopia, and if anything, God would have already come and resurrected his church from this planet and then cast this planet off into great tribulation. But because of the hesitancies and because of the way that the so-called churches has tried to stifle, delete, hinder this particular message coming from God pertaining to the seals and the message coming out of the Bible pertaining to the two witnesses and etc., it has put us in this very, very Aquarius spot that we're in right now that is causing harm and hurt in people's lives every day. And as far as I'm concerned, it is so bad right now in being overpopulated in America. And we realize that India is overpopulated. We realize that Africa is overpopulated. We realize that there's places in Mexico and South America and Cuba that's overpopulated. But if we as Americans do not stop or at least severely restrict all the people that's coming over here, all we're going to do is add that much more insult to injury pertaining to overloading not just the water resource systems that now are getting lower and lower and lower every day, but also the highway systems, which has put that much more carbon dioxide up into the air, and also the grid electrical system that I tried to tell people about in 2007, and obviously the people up in Kentucky thought that I was some sort of a damn Fruit Loop or somebody that was intentionally going to cause harm and hurt by causing electrical disturbances. This is all part of Homeland Security. It's all part of that federal FBI team that wanted to take things out of perspective to the point that even after me making 2 telephone calls that was non-threatening, the FBI abused their authority by going all the way to Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, and picking me up and dragging me up to Kentucky because of 2 non-threatening telephone calls that they was projecting or trying to project as me being a stalker. And the whole time I was trying to help the people. And that costed me almost a year in jail and being poisoned by an order from Judge Woodall in Trigg County of taking Risperdal, that is a known drug that causes obesity and breast enhancement. And now I've been having to deal with that pertaining to bringing my health down in my weight that has caused diabetes that is exacerbated one problem on top of another problem that even right now I'm still trying to get over. I don't know that I'll ever get over it fully, but I was basically poisoned by the United States government. Now you wonder how come so many people are going up against the FBI and certain law enforcement agencies, in which I disagree with any type of violence against our judicial system. I want that to be clear before I go on with what we're doing here. I disagree by using violence to restrain their violence or to restrain some of the bad actors that has been engaged in the FBI, as well as Homeland Security, as well as local, state, and local law enforcement. They're all not bad. And you can't treat everybody the same whenever it comes to a few bad apples that has caused a bad reputation with the initial bureau. That's like me saying that all the churches are corrupt and all the churches have been bamboozled and they're all evil. They're not all evil. Yes, it does talk about these things in the Bible that's going to merge in the last days that we're in, but you can't put everybody in the same category. That would be like me wanting to burn the American flag and say, well, you know what, I hate America because there are certain people that I've come up against here in America that, as far as I'm concerned, was not American, and because of it, I'm ashamed and I hate America. And I'm willing to burn the American flag in front of everybody and not be respectful to our national anthem. I'm not going to do that. I'm smarter than that. The bad apples in the bushel have brought a bad reputation to, yes, the glory of this great nation pertaining to Old Glory, but at the same time, I'm smart enough to identify that just because there was bad apples that mistreated my life, even not so much federal or state, but locally right here in Weakley County and Obion County, of various judicial judges and prosecuting attorneys and DAs and etc. Just because there is bad people engaged into the system does not mean the original design of the system is not a good system. Even though the system is broken because of so many bad actors that was in the system, does not mean that the initial system was not a good system. Because it was designed to function towards the protection and the safety and the well-being of the citizens of the United States, the way that we set our system up. So you have to be smart enough or strong enough or intelligent enough to look through the smoke screen to realize, hey, just because there's been bad actors and just because there's been some horrible, horrible bad people working with law enforcement either on the county level, the state level, or the federal level, does not put everybody in the same category. Just because there is lukewarm, hypocrite, no good for nothing so-called Christians does not mean that they're still not sincere, authentic, genuinely moral, good Christians that's trying to follow God in the teachings of Christ and has a relationship, a true relationship with the Lord. Because there are. You got to be smart enough to figure this out and sift through the differences, and you can't just put everybody in the same category, because if you do that, then you're cheating the ones that are still good cops, or you're cheating those that are true born-again believing Christians, and that ain't right neither. So you got to be smart enough to sift through the differences between the good and the bad and the ugly.
Yeah, I'll take that. So, we are the OPG competition opportunity that I mentioned. We're in the process of submitting a license to construct to the Canadian regulator this year. Following their review and approval, we anticipate construction to begin in late 24, early 25, and the current target operation date is 2028. So right now, the first SMR that's under a commercial contract is slated to be the OPG project, BWR X300 at the Darlington site.
Can I follow up on that, please? So where would the similar construct occur in the United States?
Yeah, so right now it's, one thing that Tennessee Valley Authority and OPG have in common is they have the only sites in North America with an early site permit for an SMR, and both are deploying the same technology, and they're collaborating. TVA is going to be behind OPG, so I'd anticipate sometime in the early 2030s for the TVA. Now, they still need to go through their process of final investment decision. So right now, I just want to be clear that we're under contract to put together their construction permit application that then gets submitted to the regulator for approval. Once that gets approved, they'll go through their governance process to then make future investment decisions. But if you line all that up, could be in the early 2030 timeframe.
One of the questions that I have is that who is going to pay for new build? The utilities are no longer in the position they were before the deregulation of electricity in the middle 90s, where they could afford to build. I don't think any investor-owned utility could get its board to approve a new nuclear plant, particularly in light of the difficulties building the Vogtle plant down on the southern system. So my question is, will there be new entities to build nuclear, small modular, merchant plants, which will then sell the electricity? There is a lot of interest in Wall Street in anything to do with carbon-free generation. Can we see an entirely new structure for building nuclear going forward, or anticipate a new structure? How about Doug?
Yeah, so let me go back a second to John, because he talked a lot about what GE's doing, and they're definitely out breaking barriers. There are 3 other SMR projects that are slated to be completed late this decade on roughly the same time frame. The 2 of them are DOE-funded advanced reactor demonstration projects. One in Kemmerer, Wyoming, for PacifiCorp. That's the Natrium design that we talked about earlier. And then there's another X-Energy gas-cooled reactor that is currently looking at siting in the state of Washington with Grant County Public Utility District. Both of those have contracts with DOE to be operational, like our target being in the same kind of 2028, 2029 timeframe, and we expect that those will proceed. We also have a project in Idaho with the NuScale project, which will be deploying 6 of their modules, and for the Utah Associated Municipal Power System, UAMPS as they're called, and they have a 2029, I think, date that they're currently working. They're going to be submitting their construction application to NRC next year there. So, in fact, all 3 of those intend to be submitting construction applications next year. So, who's going to win the race? I don't know, Rod, but we got a lot of horses in it, and I think that bodes well for nuclear.
Thank you. Ken Silverstein.
Yes, I have a little different perspective on the Russian-Ukrainian thing and the ultimate impact on expanding small nuclear reactors around the world. That is the negative impact of this invasion, potentially the dangers caused to the largest nuclear plant in Europe, which is in Ukraine, that it might backfire and hurt the development of nuclear power, whether that be large reactors or small nuclear reactors. So just the political consequences of this conflict.
I think that's a good question. Bud Albright.
Thank you. The political consequences are real. There's no question there. But we're looking at very different technology from the technology that a large reactor has and a smaller reactor, particularly from the fuel perspective. And the risk of destruction, if you will, by a bomb during a wartime, the risk of major release of radioactive material is very, very small. That's because of the nature of the new fuel. So, and of course, you can't design anything for war. If you're at war, bombs falling, you don't design architecture for that, whether it's a power plant or buildings or whatever. I want to go back, if I may, Llewellyn, just very briefly. I think the question is not if nuclear, particularly small modular reactor, is the wave of the future. I think it is. I think the question is, because the realities that surround small modular reactors make it necessary. The question is, who is going to deploy them? Who is going to build them? Are we going to do it from the U.S. in cooperation with our allies around the world, which we are starting to do now? Or are we going to let Russia and China do it at a lower cost, potentially because of state-sponsored subsidies? So I think that is a huge question. One other thing I want to say on the Wall Street perspective is Wall Street, they're risk averse, as we all know. And I think the answer to who's going to invest after these plants that we're talking about that will come on by 2028, 2030, somewhere in that time range, once they're shown to operate and be successful, I think you will see a flood of investors coming into the marketplace to lead a parade that has already started.
Thank you. I have a question from Rianto Rahalo, and the question is, most SMRs will require higher enriched fuel, they say 20%, than the current 5%. How ready are the fuel enrichment facility suppliers, especially outside of the Russian suppliers, in supporting the SMR deployment? Will there be fuel for them, in other words? Who would like to take that?
Let me just make an initial comment. And, the reactor that we're deploying, the BWR X300, the reason we're seeing this near-term interest, one of the many reasons, is the fact that the fuel that we are utilizing is commercially available today. It's manufactured at our headquarters here in Wilmington, North Carolina. Been used in 70% of the boiling water reactor fleet. We've delivered 25,000 of these fuel assemblies. So if you think about energy security, when we talk to customers, they want a fuel form that's available today. There is a number of advanced reactors that do require the higher enrichments, and it's going to be an imperative for the U.S. to solve this challenge of having commercially available high-assay, low-enriched uranium, because absent that capability here in the U.S., developers and utilities are forced to go to Russia for this supply. So it's a very important, and there's funding available. Maybe, Doug, maybe you want to weigh in on this in terms of just the level of importance and support that we're seeing from the U.S. government for that supply.
Thanks, John. Yeah, I'll jump in, Llewellyn, if that's okay. Yeah, this is a very important area. We are very pleased that the Inflation Reduction Act included $700 million of investment in HALEU capacity. Some is processing of materials in the near term, some is the establishment of new capacity, and some is some of the things around the edges of being able to transport and store HALEU on a commercial scale. There's more investment that's needed. We're working very closely with the administration on this. I think there's a clear understanding that steps need to be taken. I think the enrichers are well aware of this need, and it's a matter of finding the right mechanisms to get that capacity stirred up. I know the current enrichers are actively evaluating what can be done to bring things online. We have a small pilot project that's coming online in Ohio next year. That'll provide some new capacity at a modest scale, but could be scaled up. So there are things going on, and by the time we reach scale on this in the 2030s, we think we can have the capacity available to support that.
Llewellyn, if I may also, we're working closely with NEI on this. We work together to try to further the advancement of fuel production. It is absolutely necessary. We did a survey last year, and we asked, all right, what are the things from our members? What are the things that keep you up at night? What makes you not sleep? Number one, by a far margin, was fuel availability. And I think it goes back to almost everything we're talking about, because it is a chicken and egg. I know that's an overused phrase, but who's going to invest in a nuclear facility if you don't know if you can get fuel? Who's going to invest in a fuel facility if you don't know you can build the plants and they'll operate effectively and efficiently? So I think these first few plants are going to answer a lot of those questions, but we do hope, as Doug says, and we are relatively confident that by the time it is needed, absolutely needed, that we will be able to produce it here and or produce it with cooperation of allies.
Thank you. Last question, Malcolm Hislop.
If one of you gentlemen could address the issue of a couple of advanced nuclear technologies I'm curious about. One is thorium, and the other is molten salt. We've only got a couple of minutes, but if you could just, are these ever going to be viable technologies?
There's a molten salt test reactor that the NRC is currently licensing to come online in the next few years to demonstrate a molten salt reactor. In fact, there are two of them. There's one in Tennessee and one in Idaho that are both being pursued to demonstrate those. They're at the test level, so they're not at the demonstration level like John's work is or the other three large SMRs that I talked about. But they are very promising technologies in that they provide high temperatures, low pressures, some nice safety features that along the lines that Bud talked about in terms of different form of things. So I think they're promising. Thorium, I think, is a longer pole. We don't really have thorium processing capabilities today. There are some interesting features about that, but it's probably on the longer range.
Thank you very much. I would now like to ask each member of the panel, is there a new nuclear day? Let's start with Bud.
I think there definitely is. I think we have recognized that reality is at the dance, and someone has finally asked reality to be a dance partner. There are very few ways, if any, to get to the needs of the next at least identifiable 50 years without nuclear. There are many, many advantages that we've talked about today, particularly small modular. The one thing we haven't mentioned, I think is important, particularly cost-wise, is the modular element of this. That means that we can build these reactors in factories, whereas today you have to build on site. You still will assemble on site, but think of it as an airplane, an aircraft carrier, or whatever. You build them. Well, an aircraft carrier is probably not a good example, but an airplane, any number of things that can be built in factories. And I know various states are looking at hubs to do all of this. So.
Okay, good. Let's move on. Scott Strawn.
Sure, and I echo Bud's sentiments on the modular aspects and how it's safer, and probably the biggest thing is more predictable. We've seen that in conventional and renewable and storage applications over the last couple decades. Llewellyn, to your question, I believe so. I often think about what a success looks like if we get this right. One thing we haven't talked about today, but I'll leave everybody with, I do think we need significant investments in STEM, investments in outreach. We have time. We have 6, 7, 8 years before we're seeing a lot of these deployed, and then hopefully the new age will begin. But I think the faster we can connect understanding with passion and a great workforce, I do think that that's underutilized today, and it's something that we all need to collectively focus on. And I'll mention NEI is doing a great job. We use a lot of their material in STEM programs today, but it's something that we can all really focus on.
Doug, after that, you better go.
Thanks. Nuclear's day is here. And I think the other thing that has come out in a lot of our conversation today is this isn't your grandpa's nuclear. This is a different form of nuclear. The small, factory fabricated, assembled at the site, inherent safety, different sizes, different outputs. It's a totally different future that we're looking at than the nuclear we have today. The nuclear today provides the foundation for that. But what we're looking forward to is a totally different future.
Thank you. And finally, John Hall of GE.
Yeah, and I agree with those last comments and agree 100%. The day is here. It's now. It's happening. I've been part of this industry for 29 years. I've never seen the sense of urgency around solving climate change as well as energy security. Innovation is at an all-time high. The key and our focus going forward is delivering with certainty. It's upon us as an industry to demonstrate we can do this. I'm confident we can, and do it with cost and schedule certainty. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
The Atomic Nuclear Energy Force has stepped up its beat tremendously just in the past 50 years since the first design. But it still is going to have consequences in case there was some sort of a horrible event similar towards what's going on right now with Russia and the Ukrainian people. I personally believe that the reactors over there are going to get too hot, and I personally believe that eventually there is going to be some sort of a meltdown with that particular plant over there that could be catastrophes for a great deal of people in that surrounding area. It's still something that it can be harnessed under the right circumstances. Anytime that let's say that there's an earthquake unforeseeable stuff like the tidal wave that hit over in Japan. Anytime that there is some sort of a natural catastrophe, let's say a meteor strike comes and hits, it will only intensify the damage that the natural catastrophe agency will be able to will have to deal with. It will only intensify the damages that much further pertaining to these nuclear new facilities that they're talking about building. In addition towards what's going on, let's say, with the problem over in Iran, to where if you get the wrong people engaged into this particular industry, the next thing you know, instead of building reactors to create electricity, now they're going to build silos to create nuclear bombs. That's the problem with this nuclear age that we're now looking at towards trying to solve the world's problems in regards towards all the people that is in need, or they feel like that they're in need of having the same inventions as the Western world. Like I said a while ago, whenever you get to looking at the Bible pertaining to the depths of Satan, you got to realize that anything that is not natural is unnatural. And we have been adapted over here in the Western world of so many unnatural things that now we have taken upon to ourselves in believing or convincing ourselves that they're natural. It's not natural to ride up and down the road on a highway. It's not natural to have the very electricity that I'm making this video with right now in regards to smartphone technology as far as artificial intelligence. All of these things are not natural. So if it's not natural, that means it's unnatural. These are the things that the Bible was talking about pertaining to the depths of Satan. It wasn't just mean, cruel people that didn't care anything about God, that was basically atheist and they could care less about using God's name in vain or stealing or committing sexual immorality acts or murdering or whatever. It was all of the above. It was all the above that the Heavenly Father was talking there in the first part of Revelations by saying that I have not found thy works perfect yet, to go back and do thy first works over again, and that he who have not known the depths of Satan hold fast till I come. There's different depths of Satan, just like, people that does crystal meth, people that does fentanyl, people that does drugs, that once you do that, there's no turning back. The damage is done. That is a certain depth of Satan that a person has participated in that will damage them the rest of their lives. Just like murdering somebody. Or let's say you wanted to become a prostitute, and that's what you done for a living, is that you laid on your back or whatever, and that's how you made a living, was with immoral sexual acts. Or you was nothing more than a thief, and you're out here stealing and conniving and taking advantage of the public. These are all depths of Satan. But it also talks about how that Satan will come down in the last days, seeking vengeance, and basically in great wrath, because he knoweth his time is short. A lot of these horrors that are coming from the natural catastrophes, regardless whether it's too much rain or not enough rain, is all in the influence and in the sphere of that very thing. I don't know why people want to blame God for everything. They want to blame God and the Lord Jesus Christ for everything, and what they don't realize is that we're dealing with a supernatural world beyond our world, that regardless whether you be on the right or the left, regardless whether you be an angel or a demon, these entities still has supernatural powers that can do certain things. beyond even our control. And that's what we're dealing with. And until we open up our eyes in understanding that, we're going to continue to keep dealing with this in and on a negative fashion.
And thank you all for coming along today. I'd like to thank the panel, Ken Silverstein, Malcolm Hislop, and Rod Cookrow, and of course the experts John Ball, Scott Strawn, Bud Albright, and Doug True. I would like also to thank Dominic Levings of the USEA, who is so helpful in putting these programs together. I thank him, and I thank Sheila Hollis, who makes this possible. Sheila, would you like to send us away? And by the way, I think it is a new day, and I think it might add to your thinking, gentlemen, nuclear literacy. I think that could be a powerful sort of idea. Anyway, those are my thoughts. Sheila Hollis, please take us away. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and what a tremendous honor it is to be with this brilliant group. I think looking forward, one of the questions I would have is, can we utilize existing laborers, workers, union members who've worked in nuclear plants, who know about nuclear, who understand nuclear, and reposition them, considering that many of the large nukes are gone, and there's still others in the line for their licenses to run out and not be renewed at the NRC, as to whether you could redeploy these people that know a lot about nuclear. And how that would impact the process and perhaps speed up the process to have people who have the lay of the land. And then,
just like Sheila, the answer is yes. People will have to give it to you in private. Thank you so much for allowing us to do this, Sheila, and thank you all so much for coming on the program. We are adjourned, ladies and gentlemen.
It's been an honor to be with you.
Once more, the nuclear age that we're dealing with here is behind where they ought to be towards producing the amount of energy that the world is demanding right now. But at the same time, we're also not illiterate to the dangers of the nuclear age, that obviously this is what it is going to take for not only America but the rest of the world to feed off from, if we are going to be able to be a self-sustainable society in the future, if there's going to be a future. I still think that that engaging into these moving parts, these inventions, doesn't matter if it's an air conditioner or refrigerator or any of the above, that we're going to have to learn to reduce the heat level that's coming from all of these inventions, because this artificial heat is adding that much more heat along with the human bodies. What is it, something like 8 billion people on the planet, that we're going to have to minimize the heat that's coming from the compressors on, let's say, a refrigerator, by addressing some of that code back into the motor, where the pistons and different components are moving continuously, moving the freon so that the refrigerator can stay cold. We're going to have to engineer some way or another of transferring some of that code back into those parts, to where that motor is not putting out near as much heat as what they do, because one or two of the items isn't that much, but whenever you compile that by trillions and trillions of refrigerators all over the world, and trillions of this and trillions of that, and they're all artificial heat entities that are producing this artificial heat, is only adding insult to misery pertaining to the global warming problem. Thank you for listening. Good luck to each and every one of us. I hope that you have gotten something out of this particular message with the atomic nuclear energy force, in regards towards moving forward into the future. And we want to say good luck to each and every one of us. God bless America. God bless our troops. God bless America's endeavors. And shalom.